Hello and welcome back to our course, Learn How to Program. Today we are going to be going through the homework for part 6, classes. So as we've been doing lately, we are going to go to this link right here. Once you go to the link, you will see this page on GitHub with all of our exercises. What I want you guys to do is just to grab everything below this YouTube link, actually below this line right here, and all the way to the bottom. We're going to copy and paste that. Then what we're going to do is to go over to our IntelliJ Community Edition. What I want you guys now to do is to create a new file, new Kotlin file. Let's call this blank homework, and then KT, maybe part 6 in here. File, perfect. Then just copy and paste it. And then you're all set and ready to roll. All right, so obviously all of the exercises here are going to be centered around classes. So we are going to create a data class called grocery store item, and then we are going to create a class called grocery store analyzer. So the first one is going to hold data, and the second one we are going to do something with the class that we create. So let's go ahead and get started. So it says create a data class called grocery store item. This class should have 3 fields: name, price, and store. And here's the respective types. Name is the name of the item, for example, croissant. Price is the price of the item, for example, $1.50. Store is where you usually can find the item, for example, Lidl. All right, so simple enough. We know how to create a data class. So let's create it outside of this main block like we did in the previous video. And let's call it grocery store item. In the instructions, it says that it wants a name for the item. So let's do a string for that. It also wants a price, so let's do a double. After that, it wants, oh, we forgot the val here. After that, we would like store. So that would be also of type string. So now we are moving on to part 2. In part 2, what we are going to do is we are going to use our newly created grocery store item class, and we are going to instantiate some variables. So let's get to it. It says use the data class to instantiate several variables of type grocery store item. Fill it with things you usually shop for. Try to add some items from the same store and some items from different stores. Here's an example of one item. Grocery store item, croissant, $1.50, Lidl. You can find more ideas above the main method. So I made this really easy for you guys. Here is data that you can put into your grocery store item. So let's get cracking. If you remember, what we need to do is to instantiate the class. So let's just take the grocery store item right here. Let's copy and paste this example into here. And then actually you've already instantiated it. So good job. But the thing is about this is that we really can't use this in other parts of our program if we don't save it to a variable. So what we can do is we can save it to a variable, and let's call it croissant. And then as you can see here, we can do croissant.price, and then let's just print this out to prove that this works. And then we have access a field of this class, and the field is price. 1.5, there you go, nice job. So remember that when variables are stored inside of classes, that they are called fields. So this is a field, field, field. This is the class. All right, so moving on now, it actually wants us to fill it with more data. So what we are going to do to make this easy is we're going to copy this 5 times over. We are going to take these guys here. Oop. Whatever. I'm going to do this the hard way. Okay, so now what we can do is, this is a little bit messy. Sorry about that, guys. Just copy and paste this. Boom, boom, boom. This needs to be closed, otherwise it's going to hate me. Really nice. Let's reformat this whole thing. These all need names. We need to store these in variables. So this is coffee. This guy is going to be jam. This guy is going to be newspaper. And this guy is going to be eggs. All right. So really good. All right. So now we have completed part 2. And like I showed you guys before, if we pick, for example, newspaper, and then we do name, what we expect to see in the console output is the name of the item, and it should be newspaper right down here. All right, look at that. Really nice job. All right, so let's actually move on to exercise 3 now. So in exercise 3, it says create a display method inside of a data class. This method should print out the following. And it should have no return type, just print. We've done this many times before. So it should print out just this right here, just this line. And again, no return type. Use some of the grocery store items you created and display them on the screen just for fun. All right, so the first thing that we need to do is we need to create this display method. All right, so remember that a method is nothing more than a function that lives inside of a class. So the class in question is this one right here. By adding the braces right here, we've opened it up, and now we can actually add a class called display. Now, if you remember, this has no return type, so we do not want to return string or something like that. We just want to leave it as is, and then we just want to print. So let's just prove that this works first. So let's do I am here. All right, and then rerun this. And we need to actually call it. So let's pick one of our items. So for example, the newspaper, and then display. And remember, newspaper is nothing more than an instantiation of the grocery store item class. So now that you've instantiated it, you have access to this method. If you don't instantiate it, you are not going to be able to call this method. So here's newspaper after it has been instantiated and put into a variable. Now we can call display. And now if I just run this, it's going to say, I am here, right? And that's connected to what we just did a second ago. So awesome, but I am here is actually not what we wanted to print out. But remember that you always want to do things kind of in steps to see, hey, is this working? Is this not working? Do I need to tweak this? All right, so let's take a look at what we actually want to print out. It says, names price is price. It can be found at store. We've done this kind of template stringing thing many times before in this course. So names price is price. It can be found at store. Really cool. So what happens now if we actually rerun this? Well, what we expect to happen is that when this newspaper.daily is run, that it is going to print out newspaper's price is whatever the price is, I think 125. It can be found at Walmart. All right, so let's see if that's actually correct. And that's a really good habit to get into, is to kind of reason about what you expect your program to do, and then see if your expectations are actually being met. Okay, so it says newspaper's price is 125. It can be found at Walmart. Really good job, guys. So let's actually try displaying a few more things just to prove that this actually works for other items. So here's eggs, and here is coffee. Let's just hit play. And really cool, look. Eggs price is $5.25, coffee's price is $8.50. Let's just assume that they are really hipster beans, hipster coffee beans, and it can be found at Lidl, it can be found at Walmart, it can be found at Walmart. All right, really cool. Nice job, guys. All right, so now let's move on to exercise 4. It says create a list with all of the grocery store items in it. Save this list in a variable called grocery store items. All right, so that's simple enough. Let's create a variable. Let's call this grocery store items. And then what we need to do is to create a list, which we've done many times before in this course. And now we have all of our items right here. So croissant, coffee, jam, newspaper, eggs. Let's see if I can do it all in one try. Croissant, coffee, jam, newspaper, eggs. Really cool. And just to prove that this actually works, let's just loop through it with a for each. And then in the for each, we can just call the, let's just try calling the display method. So this should display all of the items. Well, first let's get rid of this up here. And then let's rerun it. And cool, look at that. Here's all the items. So now we are going to move on to exercise 5. So it says, create a class called Grocery Store Analyzer. So this is a brand new class. Add a method called add up all prices. This should take as a parameter a list of grocery store items. So that list that we just created up here, right? It should return the total price of all items in your list. It should say in, but whatever. As a double. Don't forget that before using the method, you need to instantiate the class, just like with the grocery store item display method. If you're confused, see the previous video for a refresher. When your, oh my goodness, I'm embarrassing myself now. So when your method is built and you want to test it out, give it the grocery store items variable from the previous step, step 4. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. So let's create the class. Let's just create it right here. So remember that this is not going to be living inside of the grocery store item. This is going to have its own universe. So we're going to call this the grocery store analyzer, for lack of a better name. And this is going to have one method, and the method's going to be called add up all prices. So let's go ahead and do that. So remember, a method is nothing more than a function inside of a class. So let's do this. We know that the parameter type, let's see if I can find this again. It says this should take as a parameter a list of grocery store items. So let's just grab this right here. Go back up to this. This is our parameter. And let's just call it, we can just call it items, for example, just to keep things nice and short. All right. Excellent. And it wants us to add up all of the prices of all of the stuff that you have in this list. All right, so simple enough. We've done stuff like this before, so let's take a look at it. So what we need to do probably is to extract the prices for all of these items and then somehow add them all up. So there's lots of different ways of doing this, but if you're thinking, hey, whenever I'm hearing transform one list into a different kind of a list, I'm always thinking map. So map is a great instinct. It's a great way to start. So let's take a look at items. Let's map it. Then what we are going to do is we are going to turn each one of these into a price. So basically each grocery store item, we've chopped off the name, we've chopped off the store, and now we just have a list of doubles. So once we have a list of doubles, so let's do this. Let's create a variable called prices. And let's see what we actually can do with prices. So prices is a list of double. And whenever you have a list of double or of integer or whatever, some special things kind of open up to you. And one of them is called sum. So if you just do sum like this, what you are actually going to get is the sum of all of the prices. So sum of all prices. Look at that, really cool. And then the next thing that we need to do is actually to return this. As you're going to see, this is red, and that's because the return type here is unit, because it's not there. So if there's no return type, it goes to this. If there, what we need to do now is just to return a double. And really cool. Nice job. So let's actually see if this worked. So before we can use this method, remember that we have to instantiate this class and then pass it the items after calling the add up all prices. So what I mean by that is, so the first step, remember, is instantiate. All right, that's always a tough word to spell. So let's do grocery store analyzer, okay? So this is instantiating it right here with the parentheses. So let's just call it analyzer, instantiate, and store in a variable. Okay, cool. So the next thing that we can do now is with the grocery store analyzer, now that it's been instantiated, we can use the method add up all prices. And we need to feed it, as you can see, a list of grocery store items. Where did we do that before? Oh yeah, step 4. We created this list right here. So let's just copy and paste this, put it in here. Really nice, really slick, good job. And so let's just run through this. So we have our class, the grocery store analyzer, which has been instantiated and stored into a variable. We now call the method. But as you can probably see, we are not going to actually print anything out. That's because there's no printing going on right here. It's being returned. And so now we actually have to print out the results. So let's just save this into a variable. And then let's just call this the total price. Okay. Now that we have the total price, we actually need to print it out and then rerun this. And what we should see is, yeah, 1995. Really good job, guys. So the next thing that we want to do is part 6. So part 6 is create another method in the grocery store analyzer class. So the class that we just used. This time, name it find cheapest item. So you can probably guess what this method is going to do. This should take as a parameter a list of grocery store items. So list of grocery store items. It should return the cheapest item on your list. So the return type should be grocery store item. Display this in your main function somehow, up to you. When your method is built and you want to test it out, give it the grocery store items variable from step 4 as a parameter, which is this guy right here from step 4. All right, so let's get cracking. Let's take the name right here so we can avoid repeating this. And now we're going to create a second method in here, which is totally legal. You can create as many methods as you want. So it's going to have the same parameter type. So it's going to take in a list of grocery store items, except this time it's going to return a single item. So it's not going to return a double, which is the sum of all the prices. It's going to return an entire grocery store item. So it's going to return this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. One of those guys is going to return, whichever one is the cheapest. So let's take a look at the prices. So as you can see, 150, 850, 345, 125, 525. This is what we actually expect to happen. It's going to return this item right here. So let's see if we can write that. Well, we did something kind of similar last time in the last video, but it was more with a max buy. So I wonder if we can use a min buy. Let's see. So let's take the items. And then let's do a min by. So if you remember, what the min by needs is it needs to know which field you want to compare. So what you can do is you go like this, and then price. And now what it's doing is it's checking all of the prices to see which one is the minimum. If it finds something, then it's going to return it. And cheapest item. So if you remember from the last video though, when you use max by, you need to unwrap the null value. And that's because when it runs this min by, it's possible that this whole list right here is actually empty. And so what it does is if that list is actually empty, so if it runs the min by and you give it this right here, but this items that comes in, okay, is empty, then it's going to throw a null value, which we don't want. It's just kind of a safety mechanism. So please go back to the last video if you're confused about what I just said. Just remember that this cheapest item, if we do, I don't know what it would be for you, but for me it's F1. We can see that this is of type grocery store item question mark, meaning this value is nullable. So before we can return it, we need to unwrap it and get rid of that question mark. So one way of doing that, and there's a few ways, is just to go like this, and then null. If it's null, what are we going to do? Okay, so let's just do grocery store item, and let's just give it a blank one. So blank, and then 0.0, and then store. Actually, we can just get rid of just saying blank and add a real string to this. Okay, cool. But if it's not null, then what we can actually do, and this is cool, now that you've safely kind of unwrapped this, you can just do return cheapest item, because now it's guaranteed to be not null by the time it reaches here, if it reaches here. So let's see if this actually works. So what we expect to happen when find cheapest item is called, so let's actually call it now. Grocery store analyzer, find cheapest item, and then we feed it the grocery store items. Let's save this into a variable. So this should bring back the cheapest item. What we expect is that the croissants, is it the croissants? Let me see. Oh no, sorry, the newspaper is the cheapest item. So then let's just display this, and we should just see newspaper after 19.5. Ah, there you go. Newspaper's price is $125. It can be found at Walmart. Really nice job, guys. So now let's go back to this whole null safety thing. So if I actually were to give this an empty list, so let's just do list of, what is going to happen is the empty list goes into the find cheapest item. It comes into here, it's empty. We run the min by, on the items, which is blank. Then what happens is that this entire thing evaluates to null. So this is now null. It checks to see, hey, am I null? Yes, I am null. And then it returns this guy right here. So this is what we expect to have as a return. So then let's run this and let's check and see what the cheapest item returns. It should be blank. Yeah, look at this. Blank's price is 00. It can be found at blank. All right, so not very nice, but at least we have actually handled the null case. That was actually it. So really good job, guys. I know that this was not super easy. If you're confused about anything, please remember that you can ask questions in the comments, or you can go back to the previous video or pause this, rewind it as many times as you want. All right, looking forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Bye.